Chapter 3. The Master. 8 years ago. That rash looks really bad. That's just from wearing them? Yeah, they are really tight. Do you mind? Arvaicus extends his left arm toward his master. Gallius stops inspecting his apprentice's raw wrist and grabs the bracer on his other arm. This is the second resize you've needed in the last 6 months, he says as he unstraps the bracer. Arvaicus gives Gallius a faint smile. I'm a growing boy. You're the youngest apprentice I've ever had, that's for sure. Gallius examines Arvaicus' other wrist, and your identical rashes on both arms. I hope you won't need another refitting before your graduation. Perhaps if you stop feeding me. Arvaicus looks at the back of his arms. Do you think we could order padding on the next ones? They already have padding. I don't mean just the leather lining. I mean wool, or something between the leather and the metal. Kind of like a pillow. That would make them more comfortable, and would help cushion any blows I take. Gallius can tell his apprentice is being serious. If being a guard doesn't work out, perhaps inventing or blacksmithing will be a good fallback. He chuckles. Well, master? Arvaicus asks again. Gallius lets out a huge, girthy laugh. I'll add that to the request form. We'll have to upsize your order to make room for the extra padding. Arvaicus pulls out a piece of paper and hands it to Gallius. I already took that into account. You're on top of things as usual, Gallius says. It makes me wonder why you have to wait until you're 15 to get sworn in. You're more prepared than I was when I graduated, and I was an apprentice for 6 years. Gallius had apprenticed 4 others before Arvaicus. The relationships he had with his other trainees were serious, the same kind of discipline they would have gotten in the army. Arvaicus needed no such treatment. He never needed to hear things more than once. In fact, some things he never needed to hear at all. He seemed attuned to common sense, which is what keeps you alive in battle. Even in combat, he always followed instructions and pushed on, despite challenging circumstances. The relationship they formed is more like an uncle and his nephew than anything else. The padding isn't anything new, says Arvaicus. I read that the army has certain armor designed for colder climates. I figured, why only use that stuff in the cold? Then I suppose you won't be getting any royalties for your idea. Gallius, as usual, spoke calmly to Arvaicus. It always surprised Arvaicus on the rare occasion Gallius would raise his voice. He would only do so as needed, but would still throw Arvaicus. Gallius only yelled at him directly once or twice. The first time was back when they were assigned to each other. Gallius assumed Arvaicus was going to be like all his prior apprentices, that yelling would help get his teachings and the horror that may await in battle to stick in their brains. I'm going to miss you, son, he tells him. I'm not graduating for another month. Besides, we may still work together from time to time. You'll have to introduce me to your next apprentice. I'm growing old, and I'm never home, says Gallius. I'm transferring as a simple town guard where my family lives. It's not hanging up my cape, but I likely won't be seeing any more action. There's a pause in their conversation. Arvaicus' ever-present subtle smile fades into realization. He passes a hand over his eyes as tears form in the corners. Oh, come now, says Gallius. It's not like I'm dying. You can always visit me when you have leave. What's that line your mother gave you? If you won't smile, who will? That doesn't apply here, says Gallius. You're smiling, so the answer is you. It's best to use that line after you've saved someone. Why do I feel like you've told me that before? It's because I have, on multiple occasions. Gallius lets out another one of his girthy laughs. I guess I really am getting old. You're old enough to be my grandfather. And you still squeak when you get excited. Arvaicus begins to smile again. He really only stops for a few moments at a time. For every wrong in the world, there are a dozen new opportunities to make it right. He looks forward to making that right. I'll get your order to the blacksmith. Make sure you wrap your wrist in a wet rag, Gallius instructs as Arvaicus begins to pull a rag and canteen from his pack. Gallius lets another chuckle escape. Why do I bother? I'll be back in a few. With that, Gallius exits the abandoned briefing room. That boy is truly something special. No, Elidria. Pull your hand up toward yourself. DELSAR has his hand clenched around one of her wrists. The first thing he has decided to teach her is how not to be overpowered by a simple wrist grab. If you do it your way, you'll be pulling against 4 fingers. My way, you only have to escape the thumb, like you did in Newville. Like this? Elidria pulls with all her might. The grip breaks much easier than she was expecting, causing her to whack herself in the nose with the same hand that was just restrained. She lets out a cross between a gasp and a cry, resulting in a sound that more resembles squeaking. Yes, says DELSAR, just like that. He appears as if he didn't even notice her punching herself in the face. Elidria places her hand over her nose. A smell of cartilage emanates from the back of her nose.
What if they use 2 hands?
She sounds like she's suffering from a serious allergy attack. If someone is dumb enough to use both their hands to grab just one of yours, you beat his face with the other. With my palm, Elidria states. Yes. Another thing you can do is exactly what you did to escape one hand, except now you can use two. DELSAR grabs her hand again and pulls it down. He reinforces his grip with his other hand. Now grab your hand and pull it away against my thumbs. Also, he adds, pivot away so that you don't whack yourself in the face. He definitely noticed. He isn't showing any kind of concern or care, though. And why should he? I only met him 2 days ago, and his whole shtick is about how much he doesn't care. How is someone who doesn't care going to save anyone? She pulls with everything she has and a little bit extra, grabbing her hand and pivoting like DELSAR instructed. His grip stands no chance. Good, says DELSAR. Do you see the position you're in compared to me? Bent? I'm pulled forward. Now you can elbow my stomach, backfist my nose, punch my throat, kick my knee, stomp my foot, pretty much just smash whatever is exposed and not armored. Like the guards' faces? You always countered for their faces because most everywhere else was armored. Obvious, but yes. She's right. It's just common sense, but so many people overthink things or don't even notice the obvious. It's good she's clearly not one of those people. That's enough for now. DELSAR extends his hand. Let me see that map again. But I was just getting warmed up, says Alidria. DELSAR doesn't move or give any kind of reaction. It's in the carriage. I'll go get it, she says. DELSAR follows right behind her. She climbs into the front seat and grabs the map from her bag. She turns and jumps back from DELSAR's unexpected proximity. Oh? Here you go. She hands the map down to him. DELSAR grabs the map and climbs in next to her. He sits down and opens the map. There's a town about 2 days southwest from us. We need to go there and acquire gear for you. How much of a detour is that? 2 days there and another day to get back on track, so about 3. Can we afford to make such a detour? Asks Alidria. We can't afford not to. As it stands, we have no extra gear, and the only weapon you have is the knife I gave you, which has done more damage to you than anything else. Alidria peers over the map. Which town? Dukla, says DELSAR. That's fairly close to the coast. What if we travel by boat? To pull this job off, we cannot be noticed. We need precise, calculated strikes to disrupt their ranks. Stealth will be our biggest ally. We will get noticed miles away if we take a boat. Not if we stay near the shore, says Alidria. This peninsula is just south of my village, and it will cover our approach. Not if they have a lookout on the peninsula, which, if they have any intelligence, they will. Then we travel by boat to Fairview and walk from there, suggests Alidria. We have no crew, says DELSAR. Then we charter a boat. I'm not traveling with random people. DELSAR, Alidria says sternly, if we are adding 3 days to our travel, we need to find a way to make that time back. A boat is the best way. I'll pay for a passenger boat, and you won't have to talk to anyone. You're assuming we find a boat that has room and is scheduled for departure when we arrive. We could show up and have to wait a week before another boat departs for Fairview. DELSAR doesn't stop. On top of that, the nearest port from Dukla is in Grandel's capital. That's another 3-day travel. We will lose 6 days if we can't find a voyage. It's worth the risk, Alidria encourages. We have the money, and you have me. What's that supposed to mean? People will be more likely to say yes to me than to you. I've seen it. DELSAR grumbles, but then starts to think for a moment. Fine. You're the boss, and it's your village in peril. I'll let you make this call. Alidria hammers her fist into her palm. Then it's south to Dukla, and then south to Grandel. We need food for the horse as well. Make sure you have money for the trip and the horse, warns DELSAR. I do, Alidria assures him. Don't worry. Then speaking of horse food, make sure he gets his breakfast, and then we continue your training. Right away, Alidria yells, as if she is a recruit in the army. We depart in an hour. During the trek to Dukla, DELSAR taught Alidria a pair of forms he learned during some of his travels as Arvaicus. He stressed her stances, emphasizing the importance of proper form and smooth movements. She did struggle a bit with the sword, but he knew she just doesn't have the muscles for it yet. Any free time they had was spent working on those forms over and over again. At one point, DELSAR took her hunting. He tried to teach her how to shoot, but she couldn't even draw his longbow. He had to take over when they spotted a wild hog, and she shot an arrow that went about 10 feet. He wounded it, and then tried to teach her how to kill it mercifully, but she would have none of it. She didn't mind eating it when it was smoked and cooked, but she refused to kill it herself. She was willing to shoot it, but she won't kill it while it's wounded? Go figure. The meat was plentiful, and would last a few days, provided it doesn't go bad. The trip was predictable, nothing out of the ordinary. It took 2 days, just like DELSAR had estimated. DELSAR stops the carriage and turns to Alidria. Remember, we are travelers heading for Grandel. We're here for food and supplies, specifically for our horse. You said no lying, so this is the story we stick to. What if they question our relationship? Like why we are traveling together, asks Alidria. I'm training you to be a hunter. We have the hog in the back as proof, explains DELSAR. You see, we won't be lying about a thing. This is the proper way to infiltrate enemy lines anyway. The more truths you tell, the harder it is to mix up your story and the more believable it is. That does sort of make sense. I'm the best in the kingdom at this. DELSAR puts his fist on his chest. Or at least, I was until I became so recognized. For that moment, Alidria can sense real pride coming from DELSAR. Pride that doesn't stem from arrogance, but from real experience and truth. It warms her heart to know that there's still some human in him. No matter what he does, he can't hide that. DELSAR starts the carriage again, bringing the main gate into view. So where are we getting my gear? Alidria asks, twisting in her seat with excitement. There's a man here who goes by the name Gallius. Alidria gasps. Do you know him? DELSAR asks. Not him, she says. My friend is named Gallia. His name reminded me of her. Alidria swallows. Left her behind. She was with me, and I just left her. Alidria stares off in front of them. DELSAR looks at her out of the corner of his eyes. He's not exactly sure what to say after that. Alidria notices his pause and can't help but smile, even after the memory she just shared. Softy. Gallius is my old master, says DELSAR, breaking the silence. I apprenticed with him for 2 years. Oh? Why do you think he has what we need? When an apprentice graduates, he's given a new, standard-issue set of gear. The old stuff is given to the master as trophies. So Gallius is someone you trust? Alidria asks. Nope. We're going to sneak in, find his armory, grab what we need, and get out. We're going to steal from him? Alidria sets her hands on her hips. Of course, says DELSAR. He'll recognize me. Did you forget I'm wanted? Alidria frowns, crossing her arms. Your emotions are literally everywhere, DELSAR states. At least I have emotions, Alidria retorts. DELSAR rolls his eyes. Now we just have to hope he's not assigned to the gate. Speaking of, DELSAR turns in his seat to face Alidria and points his finger in her face. We are here, so swallow whatever emotions you're feeling now and get your head in the moment. Before them is a long wooden wall that stretches around the entire town. The wall is about 8 feet tall, and the gate, directly in front of them, is about 10. It has one small battlement to the left of the gate. Halt! Demands a voice from the battlement. There's a guard in the tower and one at ground level who approaches the carriage. State your name and business. My name is DELSAR, and we are in need of horse feed. And where are you going? The guard questions. The other begins to inspect the carriage. We're on our way to Grandal. I'm a hunter, and this is my apprentice, Aldra. Alidria perks up hearing DELSAR call her by her preferred name, though he only used it so he wouldn't give them her real name. We finished our training in the woods, so now I thought I'd teach her how to hunt by the water. The second guard looks in the back of the carriage, only to see a small amount of horse feed in the dead pig. He gives the guard in the tower a nod to let him know everything checks out. He makes his way around to DELSAR and eyes up his sword. There's no hunting within the walls, and your sword must remain sheathed at all times. Understood, DELSAR replies. Welcome to Dukla, says the guard before shouting. Open the gate! Let them through! The gate, which is more like 2 giant half-doors, splits and begins to open inward. Thank you, sir. DELSAR gives a slight bow from the waist before signaling to his horse to start moving. After passing through the gates, DELSAR looks over at Alidria. Nothing to it. She glares back at DELSAR with her arms crossed. You better take me hunting by the coast, or you'll have lied. What? Exclaims DELSAR. I didn't lie. We'll be hunting for boats, will we not? Her nose crinkles. Taking advantage of what people perceive is still lying. Even if you speak the truth, but you know that people will perceive it differently from what you said, you're a liar. DELSAR scoffs, shaking his head and rolling his eyes. This is something he's done countless times. That's what makes a good con artist. Being able to lie by telling the truth is quite the skill to have if you want free stuff. To DELSAR, though, he doesn't feel like he just lied. Even if he did, it was for the mission. They are on the clock, and lives are on the line. I'll take you fishing down by the coast if that will settle your conscience. It's not my conscience I'm worried about, she replies. DELSAR shakes his head and refocuses on the road ahead. The town is active this morning. There are people going to and fro, pushing carts filled with different goods. There are no big businesses in Dukla, but there are many small ones, and it seems like everyone in town has something to sell or trade. As for the buildings, they are all a dark brown, the same color as the forest that surrounds the town. The rampart is also brown. Near the center of town is an elevated and flat platform with a well atop it. The platform looks like it could be a stage, but why have a well on a stage? The platform is made of dirt and has wood along the sides. It also has a small, 3-step staircase that leads to the top. Along the platform are even more vendors. DELSAR is stunned by the number of people and buildings in this small town. As if she can read his thoughts, Alidria asks, How are we going to find Gallius in all of this? We ask. We ask? That's your master plan? Yep. He trained 4 of the guards before me. All I need to do is tell someone that I was an apprentice of his and that I'm surprising him with a visit. I'm sure they'll tell us where he lives. That's lying, says Alidria. I was his apprentice, states DELSAR. I mean, surprising him with a visit. You aren't visiting him. We are visiting, and he is going to be very surprised when all his stuff is missing. Alidra closes her eyes and tries her best not to cry over such an appalling statement. Well, leave me out of this. She sinks in her seat. It's to save lives, Alidra. Believe it or not, we guards would do this all the time if it meant completing the mission quickly and efficiently. That means fewer casualties. It's not going to work. Watch me. DELSAR brings the carriage to a stop at the nearest cart. Excuse me, he says to the vendor. Good morning. What can I do for you? Asks the trader. I'm looking for Gallius. He's an old friend of mine. Do you know him? That man has a heart of gold. Such a kind guard, though he only works about twice a week these days. DELSAR continues his interrogation with a casual air. Do you know where I can find him? And what business do you have with him? I was an apprentice of his many years ago and was passing through. I thought I'd surprise him with a visit. Alidra closes her eyes with DELSAR's statement. That's the one she really has a problem with. His apprentice? Splendid! It's good to know there are others out there like him. This time it's DELSAR who subtly grimaces, and Alidra sees it. Regret. He feels regret. The man continues. You're actually on the right street. Just follow this one until you get to the sheriff's office. His is the next one after it. Oh? He's next to the sheriff? Yep, you can't miss it. Thank you very much, says DELSAR as he gives a little salute. The man gets all excited and salutes back. It's not a very good one, but he tried. If you need any turnips, be sure to look for me, he tells them. Alidra pulls on DELSAR's sleeve and gestures her head toward the man. DELSAR shakes his head in confusion. What are you trying to tell me? He asks in a whisper, squinting his eyes. Alidra rolls her eyes and smiles past DELSAR. Can we buy 2 baskets from you right now? Our horse Gypsy will love them. DELSAR is taken aback by the name she gave the horse. He is pretty sure Gypsy isn't a very good name for a male horse, but whatever. You want 2 full baskets? Yes, we would. I've never sold a whole basket to one person before, let alone 2. I've always estimated my baskets to be worth 1 gold each, but for you? 2 gold is perfect. You helped us so much already. Alidra gives him a huge grin that isn't fake by any means. She hands the man 3 gold pieces, and DELSAR hops down to load the baskets. Oops, says the vendor. It looks like you gave me an extra gold piece, miss. Alidra tilts her head. That's for being so kind. Plus you're going to need to buy some new baskets. Thank you very much, miss. Alidra closes her eyes as she smiles at him without her teeth. DELSAR finishes loading the carriage and hops back up front. Have a good time with Gallius. The man waves, and the carriage begins to move. You too, waves Alidra, leaning over the side. Farewell. She sits back down, completely beaming. What a nice man. You do know he's not going to be having a good time with Gallius, DELSAR questions Alidra. What do you mean by that? You said, you too. Alidra's face turns white. I said you too. She starts to stand back up and leans out the side, but DELSAR grabs her and pulls her back down. Stop, he says. It doesn't matter. I doubt he cares. Also, I thought you didn't like lying. Again, what do you mean? The whole act you just put on? The flirting and the over-the-top smiling? I'd say that's lying, wouldn't you? Alidra rolls her eyes again and smirks. The man was being really nice, and I meant every smile. I was only being myself, you know, nice and presentable, kind of like you just were, except I am those things because I believe in those things. Whatever. DELSAR lets out an exasperated sigh. We should have picked up food on the way out, not this junk. What are you talking about? Gypsy will love the turnips. Alidra smiles at the horse. Turnips are snack foods. You can't give horses more than maybe 1 per day. Now we have over 400. You're going to kill her. Him, Alidra corrects. I know that, snaps DELSAR. The name you gave him doesn't help. Wow. Alidra looks DELSAR up and down. You're a grouchy pants. DELSAR scoffs. Do you take nothing seriously? I take what's serious seriously. She crosses her arms. Gypsy is just a name and the horse is just a horse. If you want to get upset over a bad name for an animal, that's your problem. Besides, if you're going to call me whatever you want, then I'm going to call you whatever I want. Whatever, DELSAR says. The food we have left, plus grass and a turnip each day, should get Gypsy to Grandal. We'll buy real food for him then. DELSAR pulls the carriage to a stop and hands the reins to Alidra. Drive the carriage around a bit. I'm going to see who's home. DELSAR jumps off the carriage and dashes between the sheriff's office and the house next to it. Alidra watches him disappear. Well, Gypsy, looks like it's just you and me. Walk on, she yells. The horse doesn't move. Huh? Alidra tries again. Giddy up. Still nothing. She shakes the reins and then pulls on them. It has the opposite effect. Gypsy begins walking backward. No! Go forward! The horse stops. You may think you've gotten the best of me. Alidria brings a hand to her chin as she begins to try to remember how DELSAR makes it go. She comes up with another idea. Yip. Alidria? What are you... Alidria looks at DELSAR, who stands in the front of the door of the house. Just driving the carriage, like you said, as best I can. Okay. DELSAR scratches his eyebrow. Just come here. Sure. Alidria lays down the reins and jumps down. Is no one home? She whispers, hands clasped behind her back. No one. And that's not all, says DELSAR. The gear is displayed in the living room. This couldn't be easier. It's not hidden away? DELSAR doesn't answer. Instead, he pulls her into the house. Sure enough, mounted on the living room wall are 3 sets of armor. Each one has a plate inscribed with Arvaicus under it, right in the open for all who enter to see. Look at it all. DELSAR sounds excited. Take your pick. Anything you want. DELSAR, starts Alidria. This one was my first set, he says, pointing to the left. I was 13 when they crafted it for me. DELSAR lowers his voice. Actually, I was 12. I think I was smaller than you are now, though. DELSAR! Tears are streaking down Alidria's cheeks and dripping off her chin. This isn't right. She turns and storms out of the house. Alidria! He shouts after her. He turns back to face the gear. I'll just pick for you. He starts inspecting the gear and puzzles in his brain. Does she need a shield? Might as well take one. He grabs 2. Perhaps 2 swords as well. He takes 2 swords. I'm not sure I can carry it all. I'll just take a few trips. Arvaicus? DELSAR's face goes white, and a sudden panic overtakes him. He drops the gear and spins around with the sword drawn. What has this world done to you? The man asks as he steps closer to DELSAR. His face betrays a worried expression beneath a well-trimmed beard. Stay back, commands DELSAR. The man throws his hands up. DELSAR! Alidria covers her mouth, knowing she just made a mistake calling him by his name. DELSAR? Like the outcast? The man seemed to put 2 and 2 together. Put your sword down, son. Not a chance. Alidria puts herself between DELSAR's blade and the man. Stop! She yells at DELSAR. I brought him here. Can't you see he still loves and respects you? He has your armor on display for all to see. It even says who it belonged to. DELSAR looks directly at her. How could you? His eyes look betrayed, causing Alidria to feel a pain in her heart. DELSAR, please. Arvaicus. The man steps past Alidria and puts his chest against DELSAR's blade. I'm worried about you. May we talk? DELSAR begins to shake and quiver. Tears form in his eyes as he looks back and forth between the man and Alidria. He starts to stammer. I can't. The sword drops, and the man immediately grabs and embraces him. DELSAR's eyes go wide as he starts to pant. He then clenches his eyes shut and begins to grimace. He puts his head down. I'm so sorry. He begins to weep. The man leans back and looks right at him. I forgive you, and I'm not mad at you. But I failed you, says DELSAR. The queen is dead because of me. Tell me something. The man tilts DELSAR's head up to look him in his eyes. Did you kill the queen? DELSAR shakes his head. No, but I was supposed to protect her. I failed her and this country. Alidria can't believe what she just heard. The world didn't just turn on him. He blames himself for whatever happened almost 6 years ago. He's been living with that guilt and has had no one to talk to about it. She tears up, watching the 2 men hug each other. Then fix it. DELSAR looks a bit confused. Master? She's dead. Gallius points at Alidria. Then make a new right. Why does she travel with you? She needs me to kill some mercenaries, he answers. Gallius looks at Alidria. Why do you need him? I need him to save my village and my people, she says. Gallius looks back at DELSAR. Go to save. That's why you travel with her. To save her and her friends and her family. Make up for what you didn't do for the queen and save her. It's impossible, says DELSAR. I can't save her village from what she's described. Alidria will have none of that. Yes, you can, she shouts. You're the queen's champion. You fought trolls, half-dragons, wyverns, entire governments. Of course you can save a small village. Plus, you'll have me. I'll make sure nothing hurts you. I'll make sure we keep fighting until we've won. The mercenaries won't stand a chance because whatever they're fighting for is nothing compared to what we fight for. We fight for hope and freedom. They will never take that from me, and you can't let them keep taking it from you. She clasps her hands over her mouth, shocking herself with her own outburst. Her words just came out after hearing DELSAR has no real plans of winning. That is just something she can't stand for. I can help, Gallius tells DELSAR. What do you need? Gear, says Alidria, moving her hands from her mouth to her chest. Take whatever you want, he instructs her. It does no one any good sitting on a wall. Thank you, sir. Alidria gives a bow. Take all the swords and all the shields. You never know when you may need extra. Elidria grabs the last sword and shield off the wall and acquires the ones from the floor DELSAR dropped too. At her carrying limit, the shields crash against the wooden floor. You can take multiple trips, Gallius says calmly. Elidria gives him a sheepish smile. Thanks. She gets to the door and bows before exiting with the swords in hand. Arvaicus, why didn't you just ask for help? Gallius questions. Because I can't trust anyone, he answers. But I trust you. DELSAR perks up a bit from hearing that. Despite what so many have told me, I always believed you were innocent. I always knew they were wrong. It's not just my trust you still have. It's also my love. DELSAR turns his head away from his master. I loved all my apprentices, but the love I had and still have for you is different. It's a love I reserve for my family. Ask for my help, and you'll have it. I'll leave here and go with you. No, says DELSAR. You do have a family here. I have none. Hers are probably dead. We have nothing and no one to lose. If I took you away from your family, I'd feel even worse than I already do. I can't do that to them, and I can't have you do that to me. Okay. Gallius squeezes him tight. She's about the same size you were when you graduated. Your famous padded armor should fit her. DELSAR takes a deep breath and pulls away from the hug. Thank you. You're welcome. Would you like help bringing the armor out? I'm just grabbing the shin guards and bracers, DELSAR tells him. Why nothing else? Because she will never overpower anyone. Her only chances are speed. We take that from her if she wears too much. Then how does she fight? Asks Gallius. My way, DELSAR bluntly states. That's good. Teach her well. Elidria walks back in after delivering the swords. You picked my armor for me? She asks DELSAR. He did, answers Gallius, and he can manage taking it to the carriage. DELSAR completely understands what his master is hinting at, and walks out of the house to wait at the carriage. Come here, miss. It's Eldra. Miss Eldra. Just Eldra. Gallius smiles. Eldra it is. Thank you, says Elidria. Mm-hmm. Come sit down. With an open hand, he points at one of his chairs. Okay, Mr. Gallius. Please. Just Gallius. Sure. Elidria sits in the chair. I believe that if you didn't find him when you did, he would have become the very thing he is accused of being. I fear it also. Arvaicus is still in there, and I believe he needs you as much as the world needed him. If you truly wish to save your village, you must save him from himself first. I know, she says. I just don't know how. Remain innocent and keep sharing your love. Help him do what's right no matter what. Doing one wrong leads to another. Keep him straight and forgive him when he messes up. He needs someone he can trust and talk to. Even if what he says hurts, he needs to be heard. You must have patience and kindness, because if you lose him, who will save your village? No one, she says, tearing up. He's the only one who's said yes. Then fight for him, both physically and emotionally. Do not let go of him, and always have his back. I will. Elidria nods her head. I'll do my very best. Then I will take you to him. He takes her hand and helps her from the chair. Oh, and Eldra? Yes? Don't stop smiling. Elidria forces a little smile. Okay. Okay, Gallius repeats chipperly. I will lead you to your carriage. Thank you, Gallius. Any time. He grabs the shields off the floor on his way by and leads her to the carriage where DELSAR waits. The sheriff leans against his building and watches them approach the carriage. So, is everything all right? He asks Gallius. Everything is perfect. Thank you for letting me handle this. Do fill me in later. The girl seemed pretty upset when she came running into the office. Sorry about that, says Elidria, smiling while simultaneously tilting her head and closing her eyes. Yep, the sheriff responds. Arv. Gallius catches himself. Are you ready to go, DELSAR? He asks after placing the shields in the back. We are. Thank you again. For everything. DELSAR grabs Elidria's hand and helps her up. Bye, Gallius, Elidria shouts as DELSAR snaps the reins to get the horse moving. Oh, she says, realizing how to make the horse go. Gallius starts to smile. He then lets out his classic girthy laugh as they depart. Yes. Well, you folks have a good day. Oh, and don't leave your carriage in front of my office next time, please, says the sheriff, sounding not a little miffed. Gallius can't help but laugh even more.